We lost more than just flavor when we stopped eating Native American recipes. We lost centuries of wisdom, survival knowledge, and soul. But what treasures did we forget when we turned our backs on the original American kitchen? Stick around. Some of these dishes might just change how you see food forever. Three Sisters Stew. When people talk about indigenous recipes, they often miss just how much wisdom is baked into the basics. Take Three Sisters Stew, for instance. It's not just a dish, it's a tradition passed down for hundreds of years. Built on the sacred harmony of corn, beans, and squash, these three crops were grown together, fed each other, and in turn fed entire communities. This stew, thick and nourishing, combines beans, corn, and winter squash, collectively known as the Three Sisters.
Through indigenous farming, these three plants supported and nourished each other, thriving as they grew together. The corn adds body, the beans bring protein, and the squash delivers flavor and fiber all in one. What makes this dish truly special is the balance, the kind that modern nutritionists are still trying to figure out. It's earthy, sweet, and filled with everything your body needs. This was the type of meal made in the hardest months of winter and the most thankful days of fall. It tasted like home, whether your home was a tent, a cabin, or a cliffside. Now, if that stew's got you feeling grounded, just wait until we talk about a certain smoky blue porridge that practically tastes like the desert itself.
Iroquois smoked duck succotash. Succotash is one of those dishes that seems simple, just corn and beans, right? But the Iroquois version turns that simplicity into a masterclass of flavor. You start with the Three Sisters, corn, beans, and squash, sautéed together until they caramelize slightly. Then here comes the twist. You add slices of smoked duck. That rich, smoky meat lifts the whole dish into something downright luxurious. The Iroquois knew that corn and beans were great on their own, but when paired with duck that had been smoked over hickory or applewood, you get a flavor that wraps around your tongue and lingers long after the bite is gone. You'd bring this to big gatherings, feasts, or just make it to show someone you cared. This wasn't your side dish, succotash. This was the main event, and if you thought duck was the boldest thing you could put in a stew, let me take you north, way north, to a soup made from fish heads and seaweed that will make you rethink everything. Tlingit, fish head soup, fish. Head soup might not be what you crave on a chilly night, but to the Tlingit people of Alaska, it was sacred. This dish is about respect. Respect for the ocean, for the fish, and for every part of what you catch. You don't throw the head away. You simmer it slow and steady until the broth is rich with fat and flavor. Add seaweed, harvested fresh from coastal rocks, some wild onions or kelp, and you've got a bowl of something bold, briny, and absolutely primal. The eyes, the cheeks, the bones, all of it was honored and eaten. It was believed that wasting any part of the fish disrespected the spirit of the animal. But beyond the symbolism, there's real flavor here. You sat around the pot and remembered your place in the cycle of life. Now, if that has you wide-eyed, just wait. We're heading south next for a dish so rare and real it might stop you in your tracks. Choctaw roasted possum with sweet potatoes. Roasted possum with sweet potatoes is the kind of dish people whisper about, half in disbelief and half in awe. But for the Mississippi Choctaw, this was a real and honest meal, one that used what the forest offered. No shame, no waste. Possum may not sound appetizing to modern ears, but back then it was game meat like any other. When prepared right, cleaned, marinated, slow roasted until the fat rendered and the skin crisped, it tasted like a cross between pork and dark chicken. The trick was pairing it with sweet potatoes, which grew wild and were easy to store through the winter. Roasted together, they made a dish that was surprisingly balanced, sweet, savory, hearty, and if you thought that was the strangest thing to come out of the Southwest, just hold on. We're about to top sweet potatoes with something bright pink and a little wild. Get ready for prickly pear syrup, poured over fresh corn cakes. Prickly pear syrup and corn cakes. Prickly pear syrup is what happens when the desert decides to show off. This bright pink liquid looks like it belongs in a candy shop, but it comes straight from the cactus fruit of the American Southwest. Once you get past the spines, literally, it's a treasure. The syrup is made by scooping out the ripe fruit, boiling it down, straining it, and adding just enough sweetener to balance out the natural tang. Corn cakes, soft and hearty from stone-ground maize, soak up the syrup like a sponge. Every bite is bright, sweet, and satisfying without being heavy. This dish was often served during harvest celebrations when the cactus fruit was at its best. The colors alone are enough to make your day better, and the taste seals the deal. If you've never tried cactus for breakfast, you're missing out. But if you think syrup from a cactus is wild, just wait until you taste a porridge made from the seeds of pine trees. Yeah, really. And it's one of the coziest meals around.
Great.
Basin pine nut porridge. Pine nut porridge is the kind of breakfast that sticks with you, literally and figuratively. The Great Basin tribes of Nevada and Utah knew how to work with what the land gave them. And pine nuts were gold. They would gather them in the fall, roast them, crack them open, and grind them into a rich, nutty flour. Mix that with water, heat it gently, and you've got pine nut porridge. Warm, smooth, and earthy. It's not too sweet. But if you toss in a handful of wild berries, currants, gooseberries, or even juniper, if you're feeling bold, it brightens up beautifully. The texture is somewhere between oatmeal and cream of wheat, but with a buttery finish that oats could never dream of. And if that was breakfast comfort at its finest, the next dish is pure elemental brilliance, a fish baked not in foil, but in skunk cabbage, the original slow cooker from the riverbanks. Pawnee skunk cabbage baked fish. When you hear skunk cabbage, you probably don't think dinner, but for the Pawnee people, it was a culinary tool, and a brilliant one at that. They used the giant leaves of skunk cabbage to wrap fresh-caught fish, sealing in moisture and flavor as it baked over coals. This method is ancient and genius. The fish, usually river-caught trout or perch, was stuffed with herbs, maybe a few wild onions or crushed berries, then tucked into the cabbage leaves and buried in the hot earth, covered with stones or ashes. Slow roasting this way made the fish unbelievably tender, infused with the green vegetal aroma of the leaves. And even though the name might turn heads, the taste always won people over. But if you're craving something more coastal, the next dish is about to wash in with the tide, an indigenous chowder that predates New England and brings the forest.
Right into your bowl.
Wampanoag quahog chowder. Before the clam chowder we know today was ever poured into a bread bowl, there was Wampanoag quahog chowder. This was the original, thick, hardy, and completely tied to land and sea. The Wampanoag people harvested quahogs, those big, sturdy, hard-shell clams, from coastal waters, chopped them up, and simmered them into a stew with corn, wild herbs, and sometimes squash or beans. There was no heavy cream. Instead, the broth came alive with the natural saltiness of the sea, mellowed by starchy corn and sharpened by native herbs like sweetgrass or sage, the kind of dish that brought people together and left no bowl unfinished. It's still made today, and when done right, it's every bit as comforting as the modern version, just without the butter overload. And if you think chowder is where ancient cooking ends, get ready. The next one is even older, sweet, slow-cooked, and pulled right from the root of a wildflower that helped feed entire civilizations.
Nez Perce camas root mash.
Camas root mash is one of those foods you can almost hear when you taste it, slow, warm, and humming with history. The Nez Perce people, along with many plateau tribes, harvested camas bulbs every spring from open meadows. They looked a bit like onions but tasted like something else entirely, sweet, nutty and rich when cooked low and slow. And slow was the key. Camas root had to be baked in an underground pit for up to 2 days, a technique that transformed its starches into sugars. Once soft, it was mashed into a thick, fragrant paste, often eaten plain or shaped into patties and dried for travel, filling enough to be a meal. It was one of the great gifts of the land, and it still holds a powerful place in traditional diets and ceremonies. If mashed potatoes ever got a spiritual upgrade, this would be it. And speaking of rustic upgrades, the next dish is a skillet classic, straight from the woodlands. Corn, jerky, and a whole lot of heart.
Hopi Peaky bread. Hopi Peaky bread might be the most delicate piece of cooking you'll ever witness. This is not your average flatbread. It's whisper-thin, paper-light, and made from blue cornmeal mixed with water and a touch of ash. But here's the catch. There's no pan, no oven, and no room for error. The batter is hand-smoothed in a single stroke across a burning hot stone, and within seconds it sets. You peel it off like parchment. It's soft but strong, flexible like rice paper, and every sheet is layered with care. For the Hopi people, making peaky is a rite of passage, a skill taught slowly over years and passed from mother to daughter, generation to generation. It's food you handle with reverence, not just because of how hard it is to make, but because of how much history it holds. Eating it is like tasting memory itself. And if you think this is as light and poetic as food can get, just wait, because next up is a casserole that's just as seasonal but grounded in sunshine and soil. Zuni summer squash casserole. When it comes to summer eating, nothing hits the spot quite like Zuni summer squash casserole. This dish is warm weather on a plate. It starts with sliced squash, yellow, green, whatever you had from the garden, and layers it with sun-dried corn that has been rehydrated and roasted just enough to bring out its natural sweetness. The flavor is light, sweet, and kissed with a bit of smoke. This is not a cheesy, heavy casserole. This one breathes. The Zuni people have always known how to make the most of seasonal harvests, and this dish is no exception. You might throw in a handful of onions or a few herbs from the windowsill planter, but the real star is the simplicity. It's bright, it's honest, and it's proof that you don't need cream of anything soup to make a casserole worth remembering. But if you thought this dish was pure comfort, the next one is pure nostalgia. An old-school sweet made of trees and thyme, beach greens and seal fat dip. Beach greens and seal fat dip is one of those dishes that challenges everything you think you know about food. Cold, coastal, and full of fat. A good way. The people of southern Alaska made this from what they had access to in their unforgiving environment. Seal fat was rendered down until creamy and smooth, almost like butter, then mixed with chopped greens harvested from the shore, things like goose tongue, sea lettuce, and beach lovage. The salt from the sea, the bite of the greens, and the richness of the fat created a balance that's hard to explain and impossible to forget. It was spread over dried fish, used as a dip for root vegetables, or even eaten on its own in small bites. This was survival food that tasted like celebration. And if that cold breeze off the Arctic put a chill in your bones, don't worry. We're heading inland next to the warmth of fry bread and berries so thick they'll leave a stain on your heart. If one of these dishes brought back a memory or made you curious to try something new, let us know your favorite in the comments below. If you enjoyed this culinary journey through Native American traditions, hit that like button to honor these recipes and subscribe so we can keep cooking up history together. Next time, remember, these aren't just recipes. They're stories, survival, and soul on a plate.